I'm going to present to you a couple of past paper questions where the key skill revolves around expansion of brackets. Now, these are very typical questions that come up in exams. More often than not, they're in paper one. They're coming up very early on, typically, questions 1, 2, 3, that kind of thing. And they're typically used to kind of get you into the flow of the exam, give you some nice introductory skills at a good level to get you settled and ready to rock the rest of the paper. Now, I'm going to show you 3 paper questions. Typically, these will demonstrate the most common format they'll come up in. And it'll give you a chance to look and think to yourself, how do I approach a question that looks like that? What am I going to do to answer it? How do I need to think? And it's not exhaustive. They may be ever so slightly different with tiny wee tweaks. But as I say, very typically, this is what they'll look like. The 3 I'm going to look at is the 2025 paper. It comes up in paper 1 question 2. 2024 paper is paper 1 question 3. 2023 paper 1 question 2. Look at them, you'll notice the differences ever so slightly between the questions and the way they're presented and what they contain in them. So pause and have a go and then come back and check your working, and I'll show you where the marks are awarded as well. So the 2025 paper, let's start with that one there. So the question is, expand and simplify this expression here. Now you'll notice that this one contains firstly a double bracket and then a single bracket. So it tests all the skills that come into play in relation to expansion of brackets. What we have to do in a question like this is approach it in the same manner. We say, right, let's expand the double brackets first, then expand the single brackets, and then combine them together. We want rid of the brackets before we can do any combination of anything else. So let's do those steps together. So if we were to look at the double bracket first, we could use our FOIL technique for that. So we'd say, right, first elements of the bracket are x times x, then O is the outer, x times the 5, so it then be plus x times the 5. We've then got plus 3 times x, so it then be plus the 3 times the x for the inner, and then plus 3 times the 5 for the outer. That would be a quadratic expansion here for this bracket. So it would then give me x squared plus 5x plus 3x plus 15. Now expanding this bracket here, I'd use my crab claw method. Could use tables, remember, but you'd have to make sure you did a separate table for both sets of brackets and then brought everything together effectively at the end. I would use crab claw for this one as that's my preferred technique. So I'd end up getting 4 times x, take away 2 times 4, and in this case I'd get 4x minus 8. Now you'll notice that everything is combined with a plus there in the middle, which means all I now have to do is add those two parts together. And if I do that, I then simplify it all. So simplifying this entire thing, I'll end up with x squared. I've then got plus 5x, plus 3x, and a plus 4x, which will give me a plus 12x, and I've got a plus 15 and a minus 8, and I've got a plus 7. So I get an overall solution of x squared plus 12x plus 7. And that would be my final answer for this question. Now this one here would be worth 3 marks. You'd get 1 mark at this point here for expanding the quadratic, i.e. the double brackets. You'd get 1 mark for expansion of the single brackets, and then your 3rd mark would come from the effect of simplification of the 2 parts together. So it's a 3 marker that you would get there. Fairly straightforward one as long as you remember to split it up. That's what you need to say to yourself. How do I approach it? First set of brackets, second set of brackets, rid of everything together. Just remember that key thing. We don't want the brackets. Get rid of the brackets first before you do anything else. Second one comes from the 2024 exam, and this is paper 1 question 3. Now this is expand and simplify something that looks like that. X plus 1 and then the second bracket of x squared minus 4x plus 3. This is one of the ones where it's expanding a linear and a quadratic bracket together. Now we had the 2 methods for this sort of one here. I'm going to show you them both. First method was to expand the linear bracket with the quadratic bracket by each element. So we'd have x times x squared minus 4x plus 5. Now in the linear bracket it's a plus 1, so it's going to be then plus 1 times the x squared minus 4x plus 5. Do each bracket separately and bring it all together. So I'd end up getting x cubed minus 4x squared plus 5x. I'd then have plus an x squared minus a 4x and then plus a 5 from that. Then it's just a case of simplifying it together. So I'd end up getting x cubed. I've got minus 4x squared plus an x squared, so I'd end up with minus the x squared. Got plus 5x and a minus 4x, so I get plus x, and then just my plus 5 there at the end. So if I split it and did it in that manner, that's what I'd get. I could use a table for this method as well if I wanted. Column, I would put the linear bracket, so x and a plus 1 there, and across the top row, I'd put the quadratic bracket. So I'd have x squared minus 4x plus 5. Do not forget to take those signs in with it. Let's deal with the signs as early as we can and avoid complications. Each element then, product of row and column. So I'd end up getting x cubed. I get a minus 4x squared plus 5x. I'd then have plus x squared minus 4x plus 5. We then look at these diagonal elements here and we can simplify them down at this stage. So I'd have plus x squared, take away 4x squared gives me minus the x squared. I'd have minus 4x plus 5x gives me plus x. Then my final solution would be given by putting all that together, x cubed minus the x squared plus x plus 5. And lo and behold, it's the exact same as that. So there we go, two different methods, same solution overall. Question here is typically worth 3 marks. Your first mark for both of them is the same. We'd get any 3 terms. Now it doesn't matter what 3 terms it is, as long as it's any 3 terms from the expansion. Second mark would then be for all 6 terms. That's a key thing. Any 3 terms gets you the first mark, all 6 terms gets you the second, and then your third one is simplifying. Now one thing to remember, say you got one of the elements wrong. Let's say I looked at this element here and I ended up with a plus 4x. I would lose the second mark. We'll assume we got everything else right. I would lose that second mark. But if I simplified it correctly and in my final solution I had plus 9x, I could still gain mark number 3. Because even though I've made an error before, I've still simplified correctly with that error, I can still gain follow-through marks. This is why I always say working is vital. We can still gain follow-through even if we make a silly error earlier on. Always bear that in mind when you're working through any question at any level in the exam. Show you're working, guarantee your marks. The third question comes from the 2023 and it's paper 1 question 2. Now it's similar to the first of the questions we looked at, however there is a slight difference in this one and that comes from this first term here. Now that slight difference that comes in from that term is squared. What it's testing our understanding of is that we remember that x plus 7 squareds, a lot of people will write down x squared plus 49. They'll square both the elements in it on their own, thinking logically that that's what it means, and you can see where they've come from, but that is wrong. X plus 7 squared, we have to remember, means x plus 7 times x plus 7, and that's the expansion it wants us to do. Now if I were to expand x plus 7, I'd end up with x squared plus a 7x plus another 7x plus a 49, so I'd end up with x squared plus 14x plus 49. Notice how if I went with that first one with the error in it, I've dropped the 14x term. We have to bear in mind that's not what it means. Now this second part also has just an extra wee level of complexity in it because it's 6 bracket x squared minus 10. But that's it, it's a single bracket, it's got 2 elements in it with 1 element outside expanding it, just a constant outside. Our method for it, i.e. crab claw, wouldn't change. That would still give me 6x squared, and then it would be 6 times negative 10 minus 60. It would still give me the same idea. Then it's just a case of combining the two of these together. Now, because it's a plus 6 outside the bracket, I don't have to worry about any signs with the 6x squared minus 60. They're all taken care of. So my overall thing would then become x squared plus 14x plus 19, and then plus the 6x squared minus 20. And I'd then just have to simplify that one down. And what I'd end up getting is 7x squared plus 14x minus 1. Now, a common error that comes in place with that one is we're used to, when we've expanded two brackets like that and we're simplifying it, that second bracket not containing an x squared term. We're used to that. There's not very many examples of it containing x squared like this one. So be very wary of that you don't combine that with the x. Because if you did that, you'd end up with x squared plus 20x here, and that error could cost you marks. Now again, this one typically worth 3 marks, and it's the same format really as the other one. First mark for expanding the square bracket, second for expanding this one here, third for your overall solution together. So these are 3 examples of the typical way these questions are laid out and worded in an exam paper, and they're from the most recent 3 years, so they're the most up-to-date versions of the question. You have to remember the approach to these questions every single time and how we look to solve them. First step is always look at getting rid of the brackets. Once we've got rid of the brackets, our second step is then to look at how can we start to simplify the terms, and our third step is making sure we've fully simplified it, including any signs or any errors in sign that could crop up. That's how we guarantee ourselves 3 marks. All different variations of the question presented here ultimately have that same goal. It's just done in a slightly different manner. So make sure you practice and test yourself with the different layouts of each of these questions and how to approach them. Because remember, there's only one thing we want to do, and that's think smart, solve fast.